So first of all, congratulations.
Hey, Katie, thank you so much. First of all, I'm so honored to be here to be a guest on your show. I know we've been, chatting the past couple of years since the pandemic. We got to meet up in LA last year, which was really awesome to just meet in person. And yes, I can't believe I have a book out there that people can pick up at bookstores like Barnes and Nobles. It's just so crazy that I have a book out there. To me, it's still very surreal. Sometimes I'm in shock. But it's also important to celebrate this, to make awareness that, we can go out there and be who we want to be, right? Especially when it comes to Asian women in leadership, we have what it takes. And, sometimes culturally, we've been conditioned that we have to do things a certain way, not realizing there's different ways to do things. And of course, we have to learn to heal through our traumas, right? I know May is AAPI Heritage Month. May is also Mental Health Awareness Month. And we really need to bring awareness, the traumas we've been through, right? Because we don't have outlets to talk about it. Mental health is still a huge taboo in our community. And in order for us to become the best leader that we're meant to be, we really need to bring awareness of things that is stopping us from moving forward. So yeah, I'm just really excited to be here today.
Me too. How did it come about? Like, what did you, we're going to talk about why you actually wrote the book, but let's talk about how this whole book idea came about.
Yeah, I mean, first off, the publisher approached me if I wanted to work with them as an author, and then they asked me, what would you like to talk about, right? And for me, there was a stat from Catalyst that mentioned that in 2021, Asian women only represented 2.7% in high corporate management roles. And so I was like, why is it that, we have one of the lowest representations in leadership, right? If you look across the board, it's small across the board. And the Asian population is one of the fastest growing populations in the US. And so I really wanted to dig deep and figure out why we're doing, what's holding us back, right? Whether it's the model minority myth, the trauma, the things Asian women just generally face, just all these factors that we never talk about, because it's really important to bring awareness, right? So we can find ways to solve it or heal from it and then move forward as our best self. And so I realize there's a lot of leadership books out there, and they're mostly like how to be a leader, which is great. Nothing wrong about that. But we need something more. We need more, something that's deeper, something that really gets to the root cause, right? Because there could be trauma that you're not even aware of that's holding us back or holding you back. There could be trauma that we're carrying from our parents or grandparents that's holding us back as well. So really kind of peeling the layer of onions to realize, what is really stopping us. And I am not a mental health expert. For me, it's this, I've interviewed so many women who've gone through mental health issues, and I always say, seek a mental health professional if needed, right? But mental health has been something that I've been passionate about because it's some common reasons why, especially Asian women, have low self-confidence.
What do you think is some of the root causes? I know that you go into it in the book, but you give us like one or two examples of that root cause that's holding us back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the biggest one is the negative stereotypes Asian women go through, right? We're constantly seen as quiet, submissive, and obedient. And so because of that, we're not seen as leadership, right? Now I found an article recently that mentioned that Asian women are emotionless and are robots. And that is really not a good thing to say, right? Because then we become easy targets, thinking that we have no consequences, or we're not going to feel any feelings. And so this is why it's so important to create better representation for Asian women, to speak up, to share what we're feeling, even if it means people are going to look at us differently, right? You speak up and they're like, well, you're Asian, I thought you're supposed to be quiet. And according to who, right?
Right.
So that is really important, because it's the negative stereotypes where we become easier targets for Asian hate crimes, right? There's a stat that mentioned Asian women are targeted 2.5 times more than men. We are seen as just sex objects versus as leaders. And so that's one of the main things, right? Being seen as that. And so for this book, I really wanted to dismantle that, right?
Yeah.
Another thing is just, other than trauma, is the model minority myth, right? This model minority myth has hurt the whole Asian population in America as a whole, right? It started out as one man decided to say that the Japanese were, the model citizen. They've been through hell and back. They never complain. And we're seen as a success because we never complain, right? We're seen as high achievers. We're seen as successful. We're seen as the model citizen. And so because of that, that's all they ever see, right? And of course, we're seen as a monolith. So even though it was talking about Japanese people, it's really talking about all of us. So of course, we go through so many issues, right? We feel like we always have to achieve something. We always have to be successful. There's people don't realize there's income disparities within Asian cultures. We get pitted against other cultures because we're seen as the model citizen. And that can take a toll on our mental health as well, because we're constantly seen by that model minority myth.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I kind of talk upon, and like how it started, why this needs to be dismantled, right? And just different things that Asian women face generally.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you're talking about the leadership, I definitely saw that when I was working in the entertainment industry. I would get passed up for promotions a lot of times because, and I even heard specifically from some of my bosses that were like, well, you're kind of a quiet leader, or, and so and so, who is not Asian, is, somebody who, will take charge and get really, kind of in people's faces about things,
Yeah,
right?
be in front of people.
Right. And yet, if I were to get in somebody's face,
I
I
know.
would also kind of get stereotyped as like being angry or whatever, right? Like, do you see that as well when it comes to how we're being portrayed?
I mean, it's not just Asian women who feel that. I think all women feel that, when we go out there and do something or we're forging our own path, we're seen as too ambitious or too much, versus a man, he goes out there and does the same thing. He's confident and courageous. So yeah, we have that double standard, and it's just important to learn to just keep moving forward so that we can dismantle those names. Instead of seeing us as too much or ambitious, we are also courageous and confident, right? Because we deal with a huge confidence gap from men to women, right? Men are way more confident because they don't have any standards, right? They can be 20% ready and just go for it and figure it out as they go along. While as women, we tend to over prepare, overthink, and still have something hold us back from moving forward. So this is why it's so important to just go out there and make things happen. I mean, I go out there and reach out all the time, right? I make the first move. Is it easy? Of course not. I mean, like, look at me. I'm Asian, right? It's not typical for me to just go up and say, "Hey, what's up?" I'm glad we're connected on LinkedIn, or I'd love to connect with you and learn more about you. And that takes a lot of confidence too, right? Because you don't know what the reaction is on the other side, right? For me, I realize it's either yes, no, or I get ghosted. And so if I can deal with those things, or I get blocked or whatever, but if I can deal with those things, then I'm going to keep moving forward, because men do that all the time, and nobody says anything, right? So for me, it's just breaking those stereotypes, breaking those societal norms that's been placed on women for so long.
How did you get over some of your fears?
For me, really, it's having a support system. I think as Asians, we've been taught to always do things ourselves, never ask for help because it's a sign of weakness, or we're asking for a handout. But we really have to help each other out to overcome the things that we go through, especially if you have something that you're afraid of. You don't have to do it alone. Like, you can do it with a women's group or coaching group or a mastermind, because you realize that the other person in that group is going through the same things you're going, and yet they're still going out there making it happen. So when you realize that you guys are feeling the same feelings, it just makes things easier, because you're not in this alone, right? So it's really important to have a community, to have support, to be able to ask for help, so that you can overcome these fears, a lot faster. Without it, then you're just going to delay yourself, right? You think this fear is like so high up, you think it's unattainable, when really it's way more attainable than you realize, because once you get over that, you're like, well, I didn't die. I'm still here. I'm still standing. What else can I achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there are certain books on leadership and kind of, like I think the most popular one was Lean In, right? And I think that when that book came out, a lot of people of color kind of found it a little bit problematic because leaning in really isn't the same, and there's a like kind of a barrier to leaning in for people of color, right? Like what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I haven't read the book Lean In yet, unfortunately, but I understand, right? Because I mean, we still have a barrier, right? And it's not like, some people might think, well, you shouldn't really base the color of your skin as a barrier. And as much as we don't want to, it still does, right? Not for everybody, but for some people, it still does, right? I've heard so many stories where women didn't make partner, they didn't get the promotion because they're seen by their negative stereotypes. I look at an example like Kim Ming, who was the first female general manager in a major sports team. Okay.
Yes.
She became the general manager for the Miami Marlins. She has a very great track record, right? If she was a man, she would have gotten that position way faster. She actually got rejected by 5 other teams, even though she has a great track record. If you talk to any I'm not a baseball fanatic, but if you talk to any baseball fanatic, they know she's the real deal. But she had to keep on, you know, making it like, just keep on going, showing them that she is capable, right? And sometimes people don't realize like we might have to work 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times harder to be seen, right? Like her, she was rejected by 5 other teams. She finally got her chance with the Miami Marlins, and she's been able to not only break the barrier for Asians, but break the barrier for all women because she was the first woman to be a general manager in a major sports team, first Asian, right, to be a general manager in a major sports team, and that is huge, right? Because I mean,
Huge. Yes.
we're always seen as quiet and submissive. We're seen as not go-getters. We're just seen as hardworking. We normally put our head down, never make any noise. But here's this woman who constantly got rejected because she's Asian, but it never stopped her from moving forward, right? In fact, it probably fueled her to keep going to show them I am capable. And so I know this journey isn't easy. I mean, there's times where I question myself if what I'm doing makes sense or is it right or am I going in the right direction? But I realize, as people now have been sharing the book and they're so excited and they're like, oh my God, I've read the first and second page. I love it. I mean, even my own father is reading it. And, that is huge when your Asian parents believe in what you do, right?
Yeah.
For so long,
I wanted to talk about that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because
I actually want to read what your father actually wrote to you
yeah,
because
yeah.
I think it's so incredible for all of us as Asians growing up in sort of the Western world to kind of almost like it feels like we're constantly chasing something, right? And our parents may not completely understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so for your father to write this, I felt like it was a healing moment for all of us.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I understand because like the biggest thing we ever want is our parents' approval, right? It was like the movie Turning Red. Our
Yes.
parents gave us life, they feed us, they clothe us, they take care of us, and the
Yeah.
only thing they ever ask is everything they tell us to do, right?
Yeah.
And then if we don't do everything they tell us to do, of course, then there's that tension, that friction.
Yeah.
So when my mom said that, or my mom texted, because my dad doesn't own a phone. So
Okay.
when my mom texted that, I was just like, oh my goodness, never in a million years did I think that would ever happen.
Yes.
And it just shows that people can evolve, right?
Right.
Um, you know, it's not easy at first, of course. I mean, we had arguments. They didn't understand what I was doing. They silently supported me, right?
Mhm.
Um, and to me, that silent support was actually more than I was actually content with that.
Mm.
The fact that they were okay with me just doing this, not saying anything, not telling me to go out there and do something else. I was content with that because there's other Asian families that are forced to run the family business, are forced to be a doctor, are forced to be something else. So for me, that was already a big a big accomplishment, right? Or a big
Yes.
leap, right? But to
Yes.
see that is a whole nother story, right?
Yes. I'm trying to find it, but I don't know. I was trying to go through LinkedIn, but I can't seem to find it right now. But it was basically like that he was reading it and he thought that, this book is going to be really successful, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. He
yeah.
said he sees it as a bestseller. And he's making jokes now, like, you should tell Oprah about it. I'm like, okay, Dad. But yeah, I mean, just knowing now that the people who doubted you, right? They didn't doubt you because you weren't capable. They doubted you because it was not typical, right? Those people who've doubted you can see, oh, okay, she made it happen. She made it happen. And I think that is really big. And this is why I constantly share everything that I do online, because I really want, especially Asian women, to show them what's possible, right? I'm not smarter than anybody else, believe me. I make a lot of mistakes. My sister's like the biggest grammar police, and sometimes she jokes around like, "How did you write a book?" And I'm like, "Leave me alone." um, but to show that here's an Asian woman who lives in Canada, right? Wrote a book for one of the top 5 largest publishing companies in the world. And yesterday I found out I made it to like the Barnes and Noble's bestseller list. Didn't think anything
Amazing.
of, I didn't know that was ever going to happen. I mean, I was
Yeah.
happy that my book was just listed on Barnes and Noble, because I'm in Canada, and for me, like, oh my God, my book is listed on the biggest bookstore in the US. I mean, that already is a big deal for me. So I was already happy with that. But then when I found out there's like a little thing that said bestseller, I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. you know?
It's incredible. Yeah. And, that just shows how much it's needed. And when you're talking about that, piece of like showing other people that it can be done, that's what I see over and over again with you and your work, right? Like you are so inspiring. And, when I see your posts, I'm always like, wow, yeah, if when Sheena's talking about this stuff, I'm going to pay attention. And then also it inspires me to be like, okay, maybe someday I'll get to do that as well. So let's talk about even that process, right? The process of like, getting, first of all, you it's not just this book, right? With the Asian Women Who Boss Up series, like, you already have books and things out there, right? What do you think is the I mean, you probably don't know exactly the answer, but what do you think drew like Wiley Publishing Company to you and your work?
I think because when I did speak for them last year for AAPI Heritage Month, and the topic was about from trauma to triumph and just talking about the things Asian women face. And so of course when they heard me speak, I'm just guessing that could be one of the reasons. um,
Fantastic.
when people see and feel your passion, they know that like they could see it, right? And that probably what drove them to say, hey, I want to work as an author. Even that alone, they're like, we would love to have you work with us as an author. And I was like, what? Are you talking to me?
Right.
Because I
Because
still like,
most of the time people are like clamoring for these book deals, right? And then for them to just come to you and say, hey, what do you want to write about?
yeah. And it's just like, it's been such a whirlwind, honestly. They've been such a great publisher. One of the things I really love was they had an all Asian women team. The developmental editor was Filipino. I just interviewed the lady who did who's a narrator for my audiobook, who's also Asian, right? Taiwanese, Chinese. And just being able to have that, like, that is big for me, right? Because I really wanted, an Asian voice because it was so needed. Not that other cultures couldn't do it, but this was really special for me because, there's really no book out there that talks about leadership from an Asian woman's perspective that really dives deep into why we hold ourselves so much, right? And just because I constantly talk about elevating Asian women, it doesn't mean, other people can't relate to it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's so crazy that people, I guess in the majority, constantly ask me, do you think this book can relate to people outside of your culture? And, at first I was like, yeah, right. But for some reason, this question kept coming up. And I'm like thinking, why does this question keep coming up? Like, do they see me as an Asian woman as a disability? Do they think
Mm,
I can't relate to people outside my culture? Do you
mm,
think they would ever ask Tony Robbins or Jack Canfield if they can relate to people outside their culture? Do you think they would even ask Jake from Paw Patrol if they can relate to children? No, but why is it I get constantly asked this question?
mm.
And, time and time again, Asian women or, just our community, we get questioned by, whether it's in the workplace or in the business realm, our abilities get questioned all the time, or we get backhanded compliments, right? It's like, oh, you should be lucky because as an Asian woman, you got the highest position ever. It's like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, is the color of my skin or my cultural heritage considered a disability and I should be so lucky because I made it to that? No, I mean, in the end, we're all human beings. We all bleed the same color. But, why is it we always get this, right? Is it because they're not used to it? They don't know what to do. Like even when the lady who played the grandma in Minari, right? When she won the Oscars, a journalist went up to her and asked her the dumbest question in the world, right? She asked her, what does Brad Pitt smell like? And I just love her because she's savage. She was like, I'm not a dog, right? You would never ask like Kate Blanchett what Brad Pitt smells like, right? You would ask her an intelligent question. But
Yes.
why is it we get asked like stupid questions? I'm sorry, this will be a little bit out of the tangent, but it's
No,
just
it's fine. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point too. I mean, I would actually venture to guess the majority of people asking you that question they're not Asian,
they're
right?
not Asian.
Okay. Right. Like
um,
I would never have thought about asking
yeah,
that
but
kind of question.
people from all walks of life have been ordering this book.
Mhm.
All walks of life. They've been showing me like their proof. They're posting it on social media. They're telling me how they're excited to read the book or they've received their copy. And so, sometimes it's just a slap on the face that we still get constantly asked these questions, right? Or we get rejected for specific stories. I constantly got rejected for my because my story was considered too specific or it catered a specific audience. And to me is like, what does that even mean? Again, is it because of how I look like? Right? Is it because you think I can't relate to other people? We all go through trauma. We all go through confidence issues. We all go through leadership issues. This is something that every single person can relate, right? And I always say it's important to share our specific stories because, we learn something new. We can find new ways to solve problems, or we can see things in a different perspective. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And I do think that with with the things that you've actually put out there on social media, it's relatable to everyone, first of all. And then second of all, like I think, through my work as a financial wellness coach, like having confidence and knowing your own self-worth, like that is the key to everything, really.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely the key to making more money, to, being able to manifest and do the things that you really want to do. So, and that's irregardless of like what you look like, what race you are or what gender you are, right?
For sure. And of course, we in our culture, money is something that we don't talk about either, right? Or our relationship with money is not always the greatest because of course, we go babysit for our aunt's kids and our parents like, don't take their money. Don't take their money, right? Or someone gives us money for our birthday like, why did you accept it? Give it back to them. It's like constantly, or, our parents, the older generation, they like literally penny pinch every single penny to the point where you don't even enjoy that quality of life. Right. Money trauma is prevalent, right? In our
My
culture.
dad used to joke with me that he wanted me to write a sitcom called My Cheap Dad.
Oh my God. I'll give you my dad too. Cause
right? I think it's like everyone's dad.
yeah. Back in the
When
day.
you have a podcast called the Tao of Self Confidence too.
Yes.
So through this process of even, interviewing other people about self-confidence and then writing this book, are there steps for us to take to get to self-confidence, right? When you talk about the Tao, it's like, you feel like there's actually a format, there's a way, there's a
Yeah.
method for getting
Yeah.
there.
Well, the Tao is called the way, right? And of course, everyone's way looks different, right? Because we're all different people. What works for me might not work for you. What I do is I do have like a 3-step process that I tell people, right? Step one is first and foremost, believe in yourself, because if you don't have that belief in yourself, you're not going to go out there and find ways to build your confidence, to live your dream life, right? And believing in yourself means that you just know it's going to work out no matter what happens. Even if you fall 100 times and you have to get back up 101, you know it's going to happen, right? And so that belief is so important. It really, really, I know it sounds cheesy, but it's really important. Step two is educate yourself, find different ways that works for you to build confidence, right? Like for me, meditation, it doesn't work for me. I just end up falling asleep and I feel like a failure. But working out, like jogging outside, that helps me clear my head. It helps me build more confidence. And it's like I've started my day right. So find different ways, right? Just do trial and error. And then the last part is, of course, taking action, right? Especially in our culture, we've been conditioned to study, 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 get good grades. And then when we go out into the real world, it's like, what do we do now? Right. We don't have life skills. And that's really important, right? To learn how to not survive, but how to thrive in this world, right? How to have confidence, how to get over your fears, how to take care of yourself, how to embrace the unknown. I mean, these are lessons that will help us in our lifetime, because like the book stuff, we can always learn that. We can always Google that. But these life lessons is really what helps us build courage and confidence.
Absolutely. And action is the antidote to anxiety too. So the more action you take, the easier things get, and you can start to calm down a bit in your brain, right? What would you what ideally do you want your reader to receive from this book?
Honestly, I just want them to realize their potential, to see themselves in a positive light. Like for me, I just want this book to be the start of something wonderful for Asian women and beyond, to really be seen as leaders, right? To really dismantle these negative stereotypes, because media is very powerful, right? Media is what can help us change the narrative or eliminate the negative stereotypes. And so I just want this to be the start of something, right? Especially as everything everywhere all at once has been breaking barriers, making history. Hollywood's getting more and more visibility.
Yeah.
What about the other industries?
Yeah.
Where's the visibility in that? So we really have
Right.
to um speak up and bring representation and kind of ride that coattail of everything everywhere all at once and spread it all across the other industries, so that
Yeah.
we can all thrive, right? And create that positive change.
Absolutely. Well, that's perfect. Um, I want to end it there. However, I do want to ask you one thing about the media, because you brought that up, is that, you know, do you think it also helps that we're seeing a lot of this representation on the screen and a diverse range of representation, right? Like Michelle Yeoh's character in Everything Everywhere All at Once, like originally was written actually for a man.
For Jackie Chan, I think,
For
right?
Jackie Chan, right? And so, to see ourselves represented in all kinds of ways, whether it's a cartoon like Turning Red, or, as this mother who is beyond this world, like a superhero, what do you believe that, these kinds of media representations recently is helping us to do?
It's helping us to see that we're not just a monolith, right? We're not just the lotus flower, the geisha, the sidekick, the punchline. We could be a lead role, we could be the heroine, like especially Michelle Yeoh's character in Everything Everywhere All at Once. She was literally an ordinary immigrant woman who became the extraordinary hero in a movie. And that is a very powerful story because, when you look at like your Asian aunties, they go to the Chinese grocery store, they just go out there, get their stuff and leave, right? And there's a lot of like, old school Asian women who are just bosses who just never say anything, right? They just don't take, I'm just like, seriously, you do that? Like, why don't you say anything, right? Because we've never been taught to share our stories, to talk about the hardships, to talk about that we are capable of making things happen. So this versatile media representation is so amazing, right? We can be, the Asian hero can be an immigrant woman or a cartoon or, a regular guy. And I love it, right? Because it's something we can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Well, congratulations again on this amazing book. I'm really excited to dive into it and read it. And just want you to know you're one of my inspirations.
Aw.
I love everything you're doing. I probably share your stuff more than anybody else's stuff on LinkedIn. And so I just really appreciate the work that you're doing and, helping all of us, to do in this world. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I know you're like one of, I love that you're such a huge support. And that support means a lot to me, right? Because I know we can't do this alone. There's nothing self-made. Everything is community made to create the change that we want. Even this book, even though I wrote it, this is for every single Asian woman out there who just felt like they couldn't have a voice to speak up. Now's your chance, right? Now's the time to go out there and show them what you're really capable of.